All right, so the second video we're going to look at is we're going to talk about how our food is produced in this country and other countries. So right now there are three systems pretty much supply the world's food needs. One is croplands, and croplands are rice, wheat, and corn. That's the three major staples that you see there in the picture on the right. We do have rangelands and pasture lands and feedlots for meat production. And then we also have fisheries and aquaculture for fish and shellfish. So these are the systems that we have in place right now to feed everybody. And half of the world's people survive on wheat, rice, and corn. And this violates very simple principles on biodiversity for sustainability. Because what that means is we are covering a major portion of this planet with these three crops. So it brings up a Vogel principle is diversity equals stability. And so what we find in ecosystems that are very diverse, they are very hard to they're harder to damage. And the populations and the things living in there tend to do pretty well. It's when we get these monocultures where things go awry. And that's exactly what we're seeing with our food production. Just imagine a disease comes in to take out all the corn, and to wipe out one of our three staples of feeding. So again, diversity equals stability. The more diversity we have, the better off we are. All right, the next one is food production has increased drastically. Major technologies that have helped us. One is irrigation, moving to water when it's needed. Although we saw in chapter 11, that's one of the problems in California, is moving major amounts of water from Northern California to Southern California. Synthetic fertilizers, chemicals. Chemicals are quick, chemicals are easy, chemicals are relatively cheap, but chemicals also have run off into our oceans and have caused eutrophication and all kinds of serious problems. And then synthetic pesticides. Again, they're cheap, they're easy, but not only do they kill the organism we're going after, but they kill a lot of helpful ones. And so all of these things have helped us grow food, but again, for sustainability purposes, they all have issues. All right, industrialized agriculture. So looking at what we have done, we have these high put agriculture, they're heavy equipment, fossil fuel based, chemical fertilizers and pesticides. We're talking one or two crops. It's easy to harvest. The equipment is set up the way they're grown, but very vulnerable to disease. If an insect gets in there or a fungus, everything's right next to each other. Very quickly, they can collapse. Again, the goal of industrialized food production is basically just to get as much food out as possible. It's to just keep increasing the yield of food. That is the one goal, and that may not be great for the environment. Another form of industrial agriculture is plantation agriculture. We think plantations, we think of pineapples, we think of bananas, and these are cash crops, things that you could sell, not necessarily necessary for feeding the world, but coffee is one of those. And actually, the picture that you see there is a coffee plantation in Maui and Hawaii. And so obviously has destroyed the diversity in that area. All right. One of the other problems, it's now becoming, and we're going to see that in the movie we show you, it's an agribusiness. And now we're finding out it's run by very few companies. And those companies are kind of directing now how food is made, what food is being produced. And so it has become a market, and we are detached from where our food comes from. Americans spend the lowest amount on food, 9% of our disposable income, whereas many countries it's 50 to 70%. So in that regard, we are lucky, I suppose, that we have access to food. And there are hidden costs that we don't talk about, and that's pollution, degradation, health cars. We subsidize farmers so they can grow their crops, especially corn. And so all of those things have tied into what we do now. Traditional agriculture looks a little bit different. And what's low input agriculture, we're feeding just the local people. Human labor is a little more intensive. And it's a polyculture. And what you would do there is you would not just grow one crop. You would grow multiple crops for the family and or for the city or town or whatever you're talking about. And again, if a disease comes in, it's going to be a little bit different because it may affect only one of the crops where you still have others to support um, people there. So always a good idea, polyculture. And that's old school, what they used to do. So here's another principle, page 56, number 10G. Man-made monocultures and simple natural vegetation types are commonly subject to natural catastrophes. And so again, the idea is that if you have these single crops and something comes in to take it out, insect, fungus, there's not a lot of good ways to stop that. Whereas the polyculture allows for a lot less damage due to any one catastrophe. All right, and then we want to talk about organic and what that means. That is what you're starting to see now, and everybody suggests that costs more. What we're finding out now in the grocery store, I'm not sure that's exactly true. The prices are becoming comparable, at least competitive. And so what does the word actually mean? And it's a little loose sometimes on what that means. So in the US, 100% organic USDA certified organic means that it is 100% listed, but that's not typically what you get. Organic often just means 95% of the ingredients are organic. So there can be some other things that aren't grown without pesticides. And then made with organic ingredients means that it has to be at least 70%. And then you'll see the term natural, and natural just means nothing. Yeah, natural, dog shit's natural, but that's not, I don't want 5% of that in my food. So, but again, it's all advertising and trying to get you to do things. And one of the good things is talking about labelings, is trying to get labels on these things to tell you what they mean. And companies actually work hard to get those labels because they know it helps sell their products. So there are some comparisons on how organic and industrialized agriculture works. You can see this in this picture, and I would like you to look over these. I'm not going to go over them here. I think the table is pretty self-explanatory, but I wanted to have a slide where you can see them kind of left and right, side by side, and while you study. So